What's not good, Urasil? I can't be faced with not good after such a relaxing bath, although you could do with some moisturiser, said Freya as she re-emerged from Urasil's bathroom. Drying her hair with a towel, Freya had yet to see the robot and its ever-expanding culinary arsenal. Gio had also picked the opportune moment to reappear from the pantry, and was laden with a vast array of boxes and packets. Not looking ahead, his concentration was focused on the delights in his arms. I can't read any of this, you understand? But I'm sure this one is some kind of sherbet. Oh, and this is licorice. Urasil, you do... The robot shot a precisely aimed knife at the packet of licorice Gio was admiring, pinning it to a wooden beam. Unhand all ingredients, it demanded. My licorice! Your toy robot just skewered my licorice! OK, it was your licorice, but I was going to eat it. Gio stormed over to the robot and then saw the bomb with its ever-decreasing fuse, closed his mouth and turned away to hide behind Freya. Robots are your thing, Freya, he said. Everyone should play to their strengths. And what's yours, Gio? Replied Freya with a sly smile. Playing scared? The robot broke through the banter. Voila! It declared as it flipped the bomb from its tray and into the room. Urasil dived away from the kitchen moments before the bomb reduced it to splinters and flying saucers. Freya just shook her head at the ineptitude. Urasil, if you are going to partake in technology, I do wish you would consult me first, she said as she walked over to her dazed, dust-strewn companion. Calmly, Freya pulled the pot from Urasil's head before continuing over to the robot. Ha! You're in for it now, Sparky, said Gio from a safe distance. The robot looked genuinely fearful and began randomly rolling into walls. Requiem groaned as he was scuffed along the floor, and his spine was jerked with every impact. Raising her pot, Freya shouted, I hereby instigate Proclamation 9 of the Crazy Robot Convention as I say to you, game over! This evoked something deep within the robot's programming, freezing it to the spot, giving Freya the chance she needed to hit the robot over the head with the pot. The handle broke, sending the pot flying, but it appeared to cause just as much trauma to the robot, which sparked and smoked as it shook on the spot. Power coursed from its body and pulsed like waves over Requiem, who himself made a noise that at least indicated he was alive, if not in a happy place. In its last throes, the robot flung its arms wide, hurtling Requiem across the room to land in a heap next to Urasil. Once the dust had settled, Urasil leaned as far away from Requiem as he could and said with a nervous smile, I see you met Robbie. To yells, coughs and splutters, Requiem thrust himself into the air and strode purposefully over to the robot. Requiem, called Urasil hesitantly. What are you going to do? Go through that darn door, that's what. After all the trouble it's caused, it had better be good, Urasil. Urasil shrank away as he replied nervously, well, good is always a matter of opinion, so don't be... Before Urasil could finish his sentence, Requiem flung his hand in front of him, blasting the door from its hinges and sending Robbie back into his hole. A brilliant white light emanating from the other side made it impossible for anyone to tell what was behind the door. Shielding his eyes with his hand, Requiem pushed through. Freya and Gio waited with bated breath for Requiem to return as Urasil remained on the floor, twiddling his fingers nervously. In just 2 bated breaths, Requiem returned as stone-faced and determined as he had entered. As he walked through the doorway, he summoned the door back off the floor and fixed it shut behind him. Gio and Freya spoke over one another, eager to know what the room held. Requiem merely raised his finger to silence them before walking over to Urasil, who looked up with a grimace. Not a word, Urasil, said Requiem sternly. As Requiem thrust out his hand, all Urasil could do was smile back timidly and clench his hands as if begging for mercy. Urasil! Urasil! Urasil could hear a soft, velvety voice call to him in the darkness, and a gentle touch on his cheek. It was then that he knew Requiem had killed him, again. Delirious, he spoke aloud. I'm sorry for dabbling in technology. I know it was wrong of me, but I could never turn down a bargain, and it was 2 for 1 at Akihabara. 2? What do you mean 2? The gentle touch had become a sharp slap against his cheek. Urasil opened his eyes to find himself on his 4-poster bed, and saw Freya bearing down on him. Shaking him, Freya said, You said 2. Where's the other one, Urasil? Well, I did it for you, my dear. My basement leads to Tokyo, and I went to get you a robot to help you with your cooking. But it was buy one, get one free, so I got a chef robot and a housemaid, as you never seem to get the time to clean. What? Don't tell me that crazed maniac was... Still feeling faint, and now somewhat sick from Freya shaking him, Urasil interjected shakily, The chef, the housemaid is probably in the games room playing pool. What kind of chef packs a bomb, and what kind of housemaid plays pool? Well, not very good ones, which is why I didn't give them to you. I couldn't return them, and there was no way I could let anyone in Westgate know I had them, so I just let them go about their business here. Pulling himself up, Urasil regained some composure as he continued. The housemaid is quite good at pool, you know. We have quite good fun. Though she does use her vacuum cleaner attachment as a cue, the suction gives her backspin and stops mishit balls going down pockets. I can never decide if it's cheating or simply playing to one's strengths. I don't know whether I should kiss you for the thought or kill you for spurning not only my cooking, but now also my cleaning. Urasil wondered how he could tip the scale in his favour when the whirring of a vacuum cleaner and the high-pitched meow of a startled Havoc both saved and condemned him. You are so dead, just after I pull Havoc from that vacuum cleaner, said Freya through gritted teeth as she shot out of the room and headed towards the noise of crashing pool cues and colliding balls. Urasil rolled off the bed to see if he could edge his way to Australia and Harry, the guard spider, without anyone noticing. He knew that Freya's abject fear of spiders would keep him safe for now. As he entered the main room, however, he found both Gio and Requiem leaning against the pristine kitchen countertop, cringing with a smile at every crash and meow as they drank from mugs of tea. My kitchen? You fixed it, said Urasil in disbelief as he ran his hand over the renewed marble worktop. Your powers of observation are indeed that of legend, but yes, everything is back as it was, and once your cleaner has been dealt with, I'll fix the games room, replied Requiem with a satisfied smile. But Gio walked over to Urasil, flung his arm around him, and led him over to where another mug of tea was waiting. Don't worry, he whispered. We really appreciate what you did. Not the almost killing us part, you understand, added Requiem. No, although I did find how that robot dragged Requiem around the place highly amusing, chuckled Gio. Anyway, what we want to say is that we know Freya's cooking is far worse than a murderous Japanese home help. You have our gratitude, and, although it didn't quite work as planned, we appreciate the thought. So if Freya remembers that she wants to kill you, she'll have to go through us first. Well, Requiem. And then, if he's beaten, you can follow my dust trail if you want. How many holiday homes do you have anyway, Urasil? Asked Requiem as he gazed longingly out of the window. Oh, I lose count. I keep on adding new ones. I just can't help myself. My latest addition is a home on stilts in the Maldives. I thought I'd better enjoy it whilst the islands are still there. Out of nowhere, Freya reappeared with Havoc, who looked slightly more dishevelled than normal. I like your style, Urasil, she declared. Sweetly, she asked, I don't suppose I can borrow the Maldives retreat for a week or two when this is over? Thankful that the prospect of holidaying in the Maldives had saved him this time, Uracil was more than happy to oblige. "Of course, my dear," he added. "And you're free to use this French retreat, Guillaume. The bakery I got the food from is just down the road. There's nothing like a warm French baguette in the morning." "That's great. I'll cook you a meal as appreciation for all that you've done." There was something sinister in Freya's gleeful reply, but Uracil simply pasted back on the timid smile he was getting all too accustomed to these days. Requiem returned from the games room, looking triumphant. "All fixed," he declared, walking to stand on a small balcony attached to a bedroom where he could survey the gardens. Within the grounds he could see an old Citroën 2CV. Requiem beamed a mischievous smile, clapped his hands together, and hurried out of the bedroom. "Right," called Requiem energetically. "No more dilly-dallying. We have an appointment with the royal palace after all." Darting his gaze around the kitchen, he asked innocently, "Uracil, where are the keys?" "Oh, over in that bucket, but I don't think you should—" Requiem grabbed the keys with a cheery thanks and jogged off to the garden. Through the window, Uracil and Freya could see Requiem hopping around the beaten old motor like a schoolboy given keys to his first car. Geo walked over to them. "What's the matter?" Following their gaze, he looked through the window. Oh. They could see Requiem eagerly waving them over. Geo, Uracil and Freya looked at each other pensively. Putting his hand in the middle of them, Geo said, "Whatever happens, the last man standing must take the others to the hospital, okay?" "Right," agreed Uracil and Freya, putting their hands on his before reluctantly, bravely walking to the garden. Requiem beamed a smile of joy at Geo, who knew he had no choice but to get into the tiny car. Freya moved the passenger seat as far forwards as it could go, while Geo took a deep breath and squeezed into the back seat. The car was so small that even though he was seated in the back, Geo's head was hunched between the front seats. After the car had stopped rocking from side to side, and everyone was sure it could take Geo's weight, Uracil somehow got in next to Geo, and soon found that the only space his head could occupy was Geo's armpit. Delicately sliding herself onto the front passenger seat, Freya got in. She removed Havoc from her top and placed him in the tiny footwell, then folded her legs against the dashboard. Given that the car hadn't collapsed, Requiem hopped excitedly into the driver's seat, slammed the door behind him, and handed Freya the broken handle. A muffled voice came from Geo's armpit. "Do you know where you're going?" "Nope. Don't even know how to drive," Requiem said cheerily. Geo muttered to Freya, "At my wake, I don't want any French food." "At mine, everyone is to wear spandex," replied Freya unemotionally, as she stared into space. Geo's horror multiplied. He just didn't have the physique for spandex. His waking nightmare was compounded by the whimpering engine and squeaky brakes of the car as they slowly made their way to the front gate. "The humph!" called a muffled voice. "Did you hear that?" asked Requiem. "Humph! And heart fardés!" sounded the muffled voice again. Leaning her head back on her chair, Freya said, "Geo, lift your arm a little. I think Uracil is trying to tell us something." Geo lifted his arm, and in doing so, tilted the car over to the right. Uracil took in a large breath of air and shouted, "Open the gates!" Startled, Geo covered Uracil again to look for the gates. They were now bearing down on them at an astonishing 15 miles per hour. "Keys," said Requiem, holding out his hand. "What keys? You have the keys," shouted Freya, who was now so far back in her seat that she was nearly in Geo's other armpit. "No, I couldn't be bothered to rummage through the bucket. I grabbed the wrong pair." "You idiot! You could have told us, you know," snapped Freya. "I know, but I got carried away in the moment. This is so exciting." People, can we focus on the problem at hand?" urged Geo. The gates were made of 2 large sheets of iron, operated by sturdy electric arms. The tiny citron was never going to be able to break through. With the weight of Gio and the downhill slant of the road, they were gathering momentum at a startling pace. It wasn't looking good. "Gio, can you grab me that small tree as we pass?" cried Freya. "Yep," said Gio, as he put his arm out of the car, uprooted the small tree, and passed it along the outside to Freya. Freya converted the tree into a very long, thin stick. "What's the code for the door?" she shouted. Came Urasil's muffled response. "Oh, sorry," Gio said apologetically as he lifted his arm. 1, 3, 2, 4, blurted Urasil in alarm. Freya stuck her head out of the window and quickly tapped in the combination. The gates began to open painfully slowly. Freya shot her head and arm back inside the car, and everyone, besides Requiem, braced for impact. Sparks flew, the wing mirrors shattered, and Requiem gave a triumphant yell as they scraped through the narrow opening. "We're motoring now," Requiem declared excitedly.